Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mark Creamer, and I work here at Intermedia, focused on our partner base and specifically partner marketing. I'm sure I've worked with some of you in the past, and maybe you've been to one of these webinars before, so thanks for taking the time today. So today's session, which you can see here, is a partner panel. So this is actually one of the first true partner panel sessions that we've done. So I'm honored and proud to be joined by this group of fine folks you can see here. And we're going to be talking about sustaining business in an uncertain world. So that's the title and the premise of this conversation. The background, as you all know, from the registration page and even by the title and what's going on in the world, COVID hit. It threw all of us into this abrupt, sudden situation where everything was new, everything went remote, and people were figuring it out. So in a bunch of conversations with partners and many of you on this call, panel here, a lot of stories started to emerge and interesting, innovative ways of tackling this problem, this new reality, and what it means for society as a whole, but for us more immediately in technology, how cloud-based solutions actually help facilitate some of the change that's really needed across the board. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And before we jump in, just a quick logistical piece. So interacting with this webinar. So there's some emojis. You see little emoji buttons at the top of your screen. Feel free to play around with those. If you like something, give it a thumbs up. There we go. If you don't like something, there's a thumbs down. I think there's even a crying guy. Someone cracks a joke. There might be some laughing involved. So feel free to interact with that. It's a great way to express your emotions on this. And we want to keep this interactive, not only with us, the panel here, but with you as well. So up in the top screen, there's a little question box where you can send in questions. There's also an attendee chat over in the ribbon to the left-hand side of your screen. Feel free to type stuff in there. We want to incorporate your feedback and take your comments real time to incorporate into this conversation to keep this thing collaborative and interactive, not just with us, the panelists, but with the entire audience as well. And then finally, if you have audio issues, there's a little phone button that you can access some secondary dial-in info just in case you need it. So let's jump in. And, we're not here to listen to me talk, so I will get off the mic here in a sec. It's really to hear from our panelists. So I'll give a quick introduction and get the conversation going. So see him on the slide, and up at the top here is our group. So first I'd like to introduce Brian Gertler, who's a partner and senior vice president over at LDI. Brian his company is based in Manhattan and is coming to us live today from his home office in Long Island. Then we have Kelly Malloy at CTS Boston, senior cloud solutions architect. Company based in Boston, and Kelly is coming to us from her home office today in Southie Boston. Then next up, we've got Stanford Gladding, president ATS Communications. Stanford's company ATS is based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and Stanford's coming to us today from his home office in Davis. And we have Terry Lapointe, focused on unified communications and everything cloud at Loeffler, based in outside Minneapolis, and coming to us live from the great town of Lake Elmo, Minnesota, which we just love that name. Can't get enough of it. And last but certainly not least is Ryan Graven, vice president at Matrix Networks, based in Portland and coming to us live from Portland. All right, so let's get into it. So, I kind of set the stage at the beginning, and that'll be the theme for the entirety of the conversation. What's changed, and really how have you as a business and as really an IT leader, a thought leader, not just solution provider, but almost guider and advisor to your customers, helping with this whole transition. So So Brian, if we could start with you, LDI, large managed print provider, maybe historically a lot of on-prem solutions. I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about what this has meant in terms of a transition from, maybe on-prem towards the cloud, and just overall, you have some great experience in this, and maybe you've dealt with other situations. So would love to just kind of, get your take, get your story on what this all has meant and where you're headed.
Mark, thank you so much for having me and LDI Color Toolbox on the panel. Um, Maybe I start with a little bit of a historical perspective because this pandemic is not the first situation that has paused business. In New York, we had the likes of 9/11, Superstorm Sandy. Other parts of the country had things like Katrina, and California had, of course, the wildfires. There have been a lot of natural disasters and situations that have paused businesses. This pandemic is a little bit unparalleled in its scope and the amount of places it's affecting. Certainly, um, the almost immediate shutdown of businesses in New York caused people to stop using a lot of the digital office technology that makes up a core of our business, all the copiers, printers. Fortunately for us, with a full managed IT services division, a full Pro AV communications division, and our most recent acquisition of a telephony company, we were probably uniquely prepared to take a lot of our operation remotely. And I will tell you that most of the clients that we serve in that capacity of managed IT, Pro AV, communications, they also were uniquely able to revert to a remote meeting strategy, remote collaboration, sort of what underwrites, I believe, everything that Intermedia has got there on the marketplace in the way of being able to meet anywhere at any time. So uh, this situation, as you might have seen some articles where I was recently documented, this situation is driving a little bit more of a digital transformation. And a lot of what people have been trying to achieve in this paperless office, a lot of that is being driven right now by the lack of print production in the actual office. And fortunately for us, we've got this whole other side of our business that we've been able to concentrate on now and really set the stage for a lot of our clients. So even though businesses have paused in a lot of what they do in their in-office procedures, this has really given us an opportunity to focus and enhance everything on the communication and collaboration side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we were talking the other day, and you mentioned a recent specific example. I was wondering if you could shed a little light on. I think it was a school system in Harlem that you were helping with. Would you mind sharing a little bit of what that was?
Sure, I could fill an hour with stories. This particular school, this particular school, we were talking to them about a refresh on their production print equipment. They had been accustomed to printing out folders for their students basically every Thursday, and they were generating a tremendous amount of print. And when this whole pandemic rolled out, of course, with the remote learning, they started to post many of the collaterals and learning materials, a lot of their learning management system online. Well, fast forward now 2.5 months when they're actually staging the return back to the classroom, and they've actually decided that a lot of what they were doing in print should actually stay digital. So, once again, this whole pandemic has driven a little bit more of a digital transformation. And the services that we're providing for them right now have grossly been altered. So, instead of enhancing their production print equipment, now we're having conversations about digital signage in their space and how they're going to inform the students about events and instructions on what the policies for compliance are as
Hmm.
kids re-enter the school. We're providing them with things like temperature kiosks so that people can be scanned as they're entering the school and making sure they're not entering with elevated temperatures. So, we've adapted our technology to the situation at hand. And I think that everyone in our industry has got that equal challenge of understanding what businesses and enterprises and organizations require to meet this new normal.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting, and I love that example because it's a tangible, real example of this this what's what we're thrown into. It's probably a long-term scenario. It's not, it's probably changed things for forever, for the long term. And so, it got this school system, to think in a new way, to think creatively about how they deliver education to students. And we focus on technology, and I know, me personally, I often you get so caught up in the details, into the speeds and feeds, and hearing things like this, thinking about these types of things. It's great to kind of take a step back and think about the bigger picture, and how the things that we can offer can really help society as a whole. So thank you for sharing that.
Brian, a quick question for Brian. You mentioned that you had the acquisition of the telephony company, and like everyone on this call right now that's viewing this is obviously a UCAS partner in some way, shape, or form. So was that something that was like originally a part of LDI, or was that a very recent acquisition? When did you guys make that transition?
So it was a recent acquisition. It's been in the works for a little while. Even our entry into unified communications was pre-pandemic. We sort of charted that course. We've got historically, our business began in the copier and print world, and we sort of built out a business to have additional core disciplines so that we basically could connect all the dots in this digital office ecosystem. So whether it was automated workflow or digital signage, Pro AV collaborations, managed IT, we dabble in 3D, document management, backfile conversions. We're trying to address everything that is a business challenge for today's modern office. So the acquisition of telecom, including low voltage wiring, card access systems, Wi-Fi design, was sort of a natural fit so that we basically could connect all the dots in the digital office and make sure that as we speak to our prospects and clients, we would be able to address everything that they need to meet the challenges of today's business.
All the way down to human temperature scanning as a service. I got to put that one in our portfolio, man.
Well, you have to
Great one.
take a look at the way the major
I love it.
manufacturers approach this also. So the natural tie-in for us is the digital signage component. And when this pandemic hit, it was a sort of a natural extension. I reached out to our manufacturers that create displays to find out what they were doing in this modality, because I figured that what they would ultimately do is to hook these infrared thermal imaging devices to larger digital signs so it could serve a dual purpose. And that's sort of what our tie-in was to the media. But especially in this pandemic, it's a natural talk track to put out there for our prospects and clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to put you on the spot, but I mean, Terry kind of being in a similar ball game, with that transition. Just kind of curious, any specific examples jump out, or thoughts, at Loeffler making that transition, those types of moves with unified communications.
Yeah, we're very similar in construct to LDI in terms of being historically a copy print imaging type company. offering a big part of our business being in that with IT solutions, managed services, and all that as part of the business as well. And we saw a lot of shift where, the imaging side obviously really had a quick decline because nobody's printing, nobody's clicking, nobody's at the office, right? And the nice thing for us is we were already pretty well established as a historical VAR in telecom, so doing your on-premises phone systems for a couple of different manufacturers. So we had a long history in that, and we brought in cloud, really got going on it in 2018, and that really helped through this to be able to have that coming in. We're also doing the temperature scanners and screeners, and to be able to have that diversification in the business so that when one's suffering through the pandemic, the other one really kind of took off. And we were in a really good position to help our customers with that. And having the flexibility and ease of Intermedia to use what we refer to as our Elevate product really took off as well. I mean, it's been fantastic for our folks.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Good to hear. And then
a little bit of a silver cloud there also, because keep in mind that pause in the copy or print side really forced us to put more of an emphasis on our communications and collaborations IT business, which have really accelerated.
Yeah.
So we think that once the other business returns, we're basically going to be in a much better position than we ever were before.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly, I know in our conversations, it sounded like something similar maybe in your regard. And I know there are a couple of specific examples, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, kind of maybe historically focusing a little bit more on-prem or having a customer base that was a little bit more focused on-prem for many years. And then, now this transition towards the cloud to operate in this new remote situation, and what those conversations were like and how it's sort of reshaped your business.
Well, it's actually been quite interesting in our business. Traditionally, we have been an on-premise cable company. So we install your phone system, we send out trucks. But 10 years ago, we started to sell circuits, which really helped our business, and we understood what a residual was. So we transitioned a decent portion of our base to being in a managed service and providing residual through carriers. So when Intermedia said to us, not only can you sell our SIP services, you can sell our UC products. And one of the reasons it was such a benefit for us is, yes, we sell other people, but we don't make near as much money by putting it through our Elevate platform, which we know really well. We can train anyone on it, even your mother when necessary. So it allowed us to really develop our UC, and it's been going on for about 5 years. So it's really been beneficial to our monthly residual, which for us actually keeps our business running. We don't have to worry about the techs on the street or anything like that because our residual pays the nut of our salaries, which was always our end game. So that's really been beneficial to us. And our clients, once the pandemic came, they were receptive. New customers, we always move them to the cloud, but existing customers, they didn't have that $3,000 a month charge. So they really went kicking and screaming until March. Mm-hmm. Once March hit, everybody changed. Even I have a small customer. He's been a customer for 30 years. He swore to me he would never go on in the cloud, but he really had no choice when his employees couldn't manage their business. He has a website, so he needed to be able to be communicated with. We moved his team of 12 people, not a big install, but all very mature humans, to a cloud in less than 2 weeks. And, the most complicated part was getting the Gmail, the G Suites to work. Everything else was easy, but getting that piece. So it's been a challenge for us. Just the human part, I think, is the hardest for us to get, people trained. It takes a little while. I've always done it. So on some level, I don't understand why they just don't know how to do this. I mean, we've been doing this for 5 to 10 years, people. Let's do it. But there's a good majority of humans who don't. So that's been our biggest challenge. Not getting business, that is absolutely not a problem. It's managing all the new business simultaneously, successfully, for us, that's been it. And we did just get pushed into the cameras that take temperatures by a customer who said to us, I just hired 3 people to do this. It's 500, humans, 3 different sites, 3 different humans, paid a salary. We're going to alleviate that for him.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear that as a team, we're all doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was kind of an interesting common thread in all our preliminary discussions, and what kind of led us here today was the role of an advisor. Not really just providing a technology, but walking through the behavioral aspects and understanding the need and and the guidance and working together in that collaborative way. And Stanford, when we were talking, something that jumped out to me about ATS's approach was, I think it was something about packaged up as remote worker. And, so I'm wondering if you could shed a little light on what that is, the reasoning that led to it, and, kind of how you see that as a longer term thing, if indeed the case.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm seeing the same common thread being told by the other presenters here is we're all approaching our customers from a consultative basis. And that's really our mantra, is that we want to be those consultants that help educate our clients. And so we've been spending a lot of time and energy on the education piece, and not just from a technology standpoint, but just from an evolution of how business is being conducted. So, being Northern California, Silicon Valley, we have a tendency to have a more advanced, younger workforce that's coming out of schools into the workforce, and they have a different mentality of how they want to work. So we've been spending a lot of time prior to the pandemic just trying to educate our customers, the business owners. We deal with a lot of small businesses, but the business owners are older, but they're hiring the younger generation, and they're recognizing that they work differently. So part of that is wanting to work remotely and have a work-life balance. And so, like was said earlier, some natural disasters that happened in California with wildfires that caused some people to start working remotely, and we got some early adopters with it. But then came along COVID, and we were all forced to do it. And a lot of customers were premise-based. We're a 40-year-old company with roots in voice that has migrated over to managed services as well. But a lot of our premise customers were saying, I don't want to move to cloud. I don't trust the cloud. A lot of those objections that we've heard. But then once they started getting in and forced into this work environment, this remote work environment, we've had several customers say, it's not working, can you help us? And we've been able to turn them over relatively quickly. And now what we're seeing is that they're seeing that, hey, this is sustainable, that we could continue to conduct business the way that we like to. Our employees like it because they have that work-life balance. Granted, it's a little altered now with the pandemic, and we have kids learning from home and everything, but they're seeing what the benefits can be and what the long-term picture can be. And what we're seeing, we're spending a lot of time trying to educate ourselves and share that knowledge with our customers, that we're seeing that this is going to be a trend that is going to sustain itself and continue, that we see that employers can see realized savings of having a remote workforce. We have statistics that say an employer could save up to $11,000 per employee to have them work from home by just reduction in overhead costs and reduction in facilities and whatnot. We see benefits from the employee side, that they see that work-life balance, that they just are more productive and they're getting more done in an 8-hour day. So even after this pandemic kind of goes away, we think this remote workforce in some combination is going to continue to be the new norm of how businesses operate. Either they're going to continue to keep some of their people working remotely full time because it allows them to now expand their talent pool outside of their geographic area. They can now go nationally to get employees, but it also allows them to just do things much more efficiently. So they'll be either full time, or we see them 1 or 2 times a week or a month being able to work remotely. That's just going to create that happier employee, that more productive employee that businesses are looking for. It's going to give them a competitive advantage. And using technology like UCaaS services is going to give them a platform to do that. So having that education discussion with our customers really kind of got them thinking. And then, some of them jumped early with fires and other business entities. And now with COVID, a lot of them jumped, and we just converted a lot of premise customers overnight, literally. Or we're having the conversations now with saying, hey, this is not going away. This is not a 60-day solution that we're going to all go back to the office. Most of you have probably heard, Google announced all their employees are going to be remote for a minimum of a year for 200,000 employees. So we know that's going to trickle down to small businesses as well. So just continuing to educate our customers of how the technology is going to help their employees and their business operations and see that could be sustainable has been really the key to our success over recent months.
By the way, all this statistical evidence has really backed up your comments with a recent survey done where they said only 14% of the workers that were surveyed actually wanted to return back to the office full time. 14%.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of similar statistics, and owners are seeing that realize. They're being. We've probably seen it in our own business if we haven't had remote employees. I've had conversations with customers that said we're not having them come back. We're telling our landlords we're not going to renew our lease and we're going to do this remotely. Or employees are asking their bosses, can I do this long term? Can we make this more sustainable? So it's really creating conversations that employees and employers haven't had before, and with this type of technology, it's easy to do. That employers that didn't have confidence in it now do have confidence because they've been doing it for 4 months and seeing the world's not ending from a business perspective.
That's pretty funny. You mentioned the 14%, Brian, just because Matrix Networks is a living example of that. We're only a 21-person organization, and we opened up a month ago, June 22nd or so, and currently there are 3 technicians in the office. So almost exactly 14% off. So
there you go.
Yeah, and it's interesting, just kind of a personal anecdote on this. So before working at Intermedia, I used to work in consulting, and so all I've known really is a remote enabled way of working. So even before the pandemic hit, I think things we all kind of knew this, but trending that way, and that's just how work is going. And then like everyone's saying, for the longer term, now it's kind of a widespread acknowledgement that cloud and cloud UC is the way of the future workforce. I actually saw an article this morning that Morgan Stanley just invested between like $2 and $3 billion into a larger company, MSP, that provides unified communications among some other stuff. So that's just kind of jumped out as an emphasis on this conversation that we're having here. And so I want to jump.
A lot of non-believers are now becoming believers of cloud technology because of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
We found that it's led us into having some good contact center sales, because even though we all own and manage companies, it's great everybody works at home, but there are people who want to measure that. So it's allowed me to do more contact center demos than I ever have and turn them into sales for the measurement tool piece. So that's a much better revenue generator for us as well. 10 seats of UC is much better, much more dollars than just a UC seat. So we will take that every day. And once it goes in, there's really not much to it. It's easy to manage.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And so, Terry, I kind of want to shift over to you. We've been talking a lot about the trend and where things have gone, and in conversations we have had, how does this materialize really at a business? And so something we talked about, you shed some light on what it meant for your sales team. And so I was wondering if you could share a little bit with the group on, did the broader sales team, did you guys kind of pivot your approach to market, pitches, having conversations about phone systems kind of specifically, and how it's changed with Elevate and the full thing, kind of soup to nuts?
Yeah, I think we've actually seen a couple of pivots, and the customers kind of drove it for us. Like I mentioned before, we were traditional VAR. We had a couple of on-premises solutions that we installed and supported, and then the focus really over the last couple of years has really shifted more and more to that cloud-based solution. And then once COVID hit, then phase 2 of that came because the customers were telling us, we're going to the cloud, right? So the consultative nature became more about what cloud solution are we going to look at versus, hey, what's the difference cloud versus prem? How are we going to build ROIs? What's the total cost of ownership? And all those conversations just kind of went sideways. And everyone's like, hey, we need to get people working from home. We need to, get everybody accustomed to it. We need to get them in there. We need easy tools, and the reality is, Elevate for us is a really, really simple tool. And with that, people wanted our support. We sold a lot of other retail type cloud solutions over the last year, over 2019. And people were coming to us and they're like, yeah, okay, we need to move to the cloud, but we love our Loeffler support. So our Loeffler team's UC team has a 99.6 net promoter score. People wanted to carry that into their cloud. And so we've seen this next shift of people saying, yeah, we want to go to the cloud. And Elevate has really been fantastic for us for that, because it allows us to give them that fully featured, fully enabled cloud solution. Anybody, I always tell customers this: you can work wherever, whenever, however you want from any device, right? And the beauty of Elevate is you can still be supported by that amazing team that we have at Loeffler with that huge net promoter score. And so customer demand shifted us really into the cloud as probably 97% of our voice business now. And then that support level pushed us really towards that Elevate solution.
Yeah.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that, because we sort of did what you're talking about a little bit in reverse, and maybe you did that originally also. So we took a lot of the credibility that we built up as a service organ and support organization to bring us really into more of a technology mode. And of course, having the conversations about unified communications is not just about that, because they have to have the right infrastructure. So we were able to have the whole managed IT conversation with them. And, it's not like we weren't already talking to the IT directors, because, as you well know, anything that hangs on their network, any device, they're bringing in IT people to make sure that everything is secure and locked down. So you have to have all that in place. But we felt as a business, we would be able to leverage thousands upon thousands upon thousands of very loyal customers that we have on the copy and print side with immediate creds, so that once we brought in these other areas of business, they already know us and would just feel very feel the trust and credibility in the services that we provide in all these other areas.
It brings up a good point about the trepidation of migration, right? I mean, everybody that owns a business with an on-premises solution or something that was just antiquated in its nature needed to make that shift. And what I'm seeing in my sales numbers and what the team has been able to accomplish since March is the majority of people that are coming to Matrix looking for that cloud-based phone solution are very much interested in the Matrix managed side of that. And I think that that is a balance between people's fear of moving to the cloud versus the comfortability that you have with a trusted partner over several years. Intermedia is not the only product that we sell, but those numbers are still fairly down for the big vendors that are in our portfolio. Our Intermedia numbers have skyrocketed, and it literally is just because of the frontline first tier support and ongoing management that they get from a trusted partner.
Yep.
And I think that's a unique value add that we're able to provide. Us as Intermedia partners is that level of support. A lot of others just want to sell it and let the IT team manage it. But because we have those relationships, whether it's through a historical relationship with the customer or in our case, the education, we just educate. And then when they're ready in their business, they come to us for that dialogue. So similar to what Terry's experience has been, the pandemic caused them to say, okay, hey, we're ready to go to the cloud. And so you're able to make the change when they're ready to make the change, and you're not trying to force them to make the change if their business isn't ready. So we're just be there to help them, and with the support we've been able to provide in the years. And they still want that moving forward for sure. So having that piece is key. So we're very similar to that to the other panelists.
Yeah, absolutely. And so shifting gears a little bit, Ryan, so, you've got a marketing background, and I know you stepped into this larger role, overall, business strategy, leading sales, and all that. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you've seen marketing shift, and from that strategic standpoint, ultimately leading to sales. But in this new sort of all digital world, digital environment, if you could talk a little bit about what it's meant from a marketing standpoint, from your perspective.
Yeah, I have the fortunate ability to run the marketing department as the only marketer for Matrix, as well as manage the outside sales team, which is just a fantastic combination. But it has been a very unique shift. I've been doing this for 9 years, and I did start as a marketing intern for Matrix, and so a large pool of what I did was on-premise events. That was one of our primary drivers for net new opportunities, net new conversations, as well as to educate our client base on what we were up to and how we could better support them. So moving, obviously, everything from from the physical environment to a digital world was a colossal shift. And one thing that stood out to me the most was the amount of the acceptance level of our audiences for the webinar environment or the virtual space. I would throw a webinar and promote it with 5 big email blasts, and as much as I could, social, everything, right? And we'd have 12 attendees, and you're like, this is so awful. And of course, it was a thing where we just pretend like there was 100 attendees, and then send out the recording to everybody that clicked on a link. But that changed, and it changed fast. The first out of the first like 4 weeks, we ran one major webinar with a lot of promotion behind it. We called it Secure IT, talking about endpoint security, and we had 152 registrations and 80 attendees, and the engagement level was high, and it was just people are chomping at the bit for that event space, for that interaction, for that human interaction, right? So obviously capitalizing on that was my goal moving forward, and that that kind of spurred into how do you do more than just an informational webinar. One thing that we started doing, which I would like to think I'm the first person to do it, but I'm sure others on the call might disagree, was to offer a Grubhub gift card for attendees, right? And do a virtual lunch and learn, because almost every event I threw involved 2 things: food and booze. Right. And so while I couldn't send you a bottle of whiskey, I could send you a $25 gift card. We actually had some funny mistakes along the way and learned from that. So the one thing that I want to preface to everybody on the call is, if you want to copy paste that idea, be wary. There are organizations out there that will sign up for your webinar with legitimate business names and emails and take your Grubhub gift card and go sell it on the black market for 80% its value. So you do have to do a little bit more scrubbing when it comes to that. I've had some very awkward conversations as attendees would register for the events, but just a word of caution there. Oh, and also, I got to say this too: email marketing. Everybody has that wing in their organization. We came out of the gate super hot. We just came out with we're all shutting down, the world's ending, migrate to the cloud, and the response was just horrific. I've never had such angry replies, and none of them yielded any sales, right? It just basically angered my audience. And so we did have to step back and have that empathetic approach, an educational approach, like so many of you have said, to just be there as a trusted partner when the time is right. But also, speaking of empathy, man, if I get one more email that says "in these changing times" or "challenging times," I'm gonna lose it. I can't take it anymore. I'm not writing that as the first sentence, because when I see that in my inbox, I just hit delete. So just another little nugget there.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's a good
so
point.
along those lines, Ryan, to share just a quick experience, we're trying to do the same thing with the webinars and trying to make them different. We actually hired a magician, and we sent out a package. We sent out a package that had a deck of cards and some marketing material and all that, overnight it with the Grubhub so they could get some food. But we during the webinar, we had the magician actually do some tricks with the people, and it was amazing how well it worked, because we had 70 people on, and he would pick one random person and do the trick, and it worked. Like, I don't know how he did it, but it just get that interaction going. It was totally different. So
was this an hour of magician, or was it like education, 15 minutes, then bam, trick?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was segment, trick, segment, trick, segment, trick, and then grand finale, trick. And it, you know, it kept the attendance. Everybody stayed on. And we got some marketing in front of them. So it was a little bit more expensive because we sent some marketing material and everything in front of them. But we got a lot of, so point being, creativity really is helpful for the webinars because we are kind of webinar to death.
You know, and I'll also say, like, having a partner in Intermedia, like, honestly, they go to bat for their partners. And I can't tell you how nice it is to have a partnership with somebody that truly understands that there is a cost, hard and soft cost, to running these events. And they've done nothing but shown great support.
Talking about trick, I'm getting some pings from some of my partners who are hanging their hat on what Kelly said about even being able to train your mother. So they're sending me. We've got lists of people to send off to Kelly for training. So.
Thank you. Thanks.
There we go. Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Ryan, and I appreciate hearing that. You know, and that's something that I don't want to, take time, really not trying to plug Intermedia too much on this call, but, that's definitely something that we take to heart and try to do with each and every one of our partners. And, we are here with MDF, kind of anyone on the call will, work with you if you're looking for a fancy banner like Terry's got back there. We can help you out with something like that. Looking to get creative with different marketing initiative. We do have funds available for that as well, and we'll work hand in hand. So, just as
when your partner comes to you and says, "Hey, would you mind being on a panel so that we can educate all your competition on how to do business better against you?" There has to be a reason why I'm willing to do it, right? So
Terry,
that's the reason.
I can help you go digital.
I was thinking, I want a TV. Can I have a TV instead of a sign?
There you go.
Yeah, we'll get Tracy on that.
Great.
Cool. Well, guys, we're getting close to time here, so we can start wrapping up. But this has been a great conversation, and something that that I wasn't anticipating talking much about, but that came up was that support. So thanks for sharing all the stories on that. The stories with your customers, and yeah, I mean, this is just good. It's given me a lot to think about. Before we kind of wrap up, any closing remarks on, would be interested on, not estimations or whatever, but like longer term outlook on, where sort of your focus is, or thinking on, specifically the remote work and the in office. If you're starting to see customers, are you guys seeing customers go back into the office at all? Or is it more of 14%. a 100% remote? What's that? 14%.
Hey, 14% in New York City is still a big population.
That's right. Yeah.
I'd say in Boston, we're about 25%. We had no traffic for a really long time. It was fantastic. Just the best thing ever. But now traveling around can take, rather than 15 minutes to go across town, it now takes a half an hour. So that's an increase. It's not terrible, could be worse. So people are going back. I have a niece who works at Biogen, which I don't want to say, but it was Biogen. And Biogen was going to go back to work this year, but they've now just decided, they brought the virus to our coast. Remember that whole story about the meeting where all the execs were at there? Well, they're going back 10%, and it's voluntary. If you want to go back to the office, you can go back. They're guaranteeing that it's safe, and it's up to you. And if you use public transportation, you definitely do not have to come back to the office.
Yeah.
Well,
we're seeing out in California.
I would say I'm probably the incurable optimist in the group. So I think, having seen a lot of these catastrophes in New York, I think that there is going to be potentially a little bit more return to business. But we're going to take the approach of listening to our customers and listening to our prospects and understanding what they need to perpetuate and to have business continuity. And if we need to, and I hate to use the word pivot again, But if we need to evolve and change our services to suit the needs of business, we're going to change up our model and make sure that we can continue to service our population in the way that they need to be serviced, outfitting them with all of the different technology that they need to continue in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is we have to evolve because the customers are evolving, so we have to evolve with them. In California, majority of people are not going back to the office. It's kind of still a skeleton crew out here, so we're just trying to provide the tools and the resources to help customers do either or, right? So if you want to work remotely and bring it into the office, you can. So we're trying to create that infrastructure so they have that flexibility to make it sustainable and long term. So, and if there's, if we do go back and then we get a second wave, we could overnight, they could go 100% remote without having to worry about it. So that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. That longer term flex agility, like you said, every customer can be different, and who knows how things will shake out. So, and that's kind of how we position things as a whole, and are thinking about the market as a whole, and our approach as Intermedia as a vendor is, it's that hybrid model. It's both. It's being able to service the back and forth, and if you look at Unite specifically, desktop app and mobile app, it's like wherever. So I think that's a great point, Stanford. Thanks for kind of articulating that so well. And so we do have some questions here from the audience that I'm hoping we can bat around a little bit. So one of them, this is kind of an interesting one, and one I feel like I've been hearing more and more is in regards to the healthcare industry and hospitals. Do any of you guys have an example of dealing with a hospital or healthcare organization and helping them with the transition to a cloud?
We have a couple of healthcare organizations that we're in the midst of migrating them from the prem to the cloud, and where we're starting is, like Kelly said earlier, is contact center. So obviously a historic premise-based contact centers, a lot of agents in a confined space, and so now we have to give them the contact center work remotely. So cloud contact centers allowing us to deliver that solution to them, so they could do. We have proposals actually just going out now where some healthcare facilities are being contracted by local counties to be testing sites, and so they need to set up new queues or new groups solely for appointment setting for COVID testing and for results. So, and we're using cloud technology and cloud contact center to do that because these agents are home to do that. So we're definitely seeing that, and they're not batting an eye of using a cloud versus premise because they know they really can't do premise to meet the COVID standard that we need to in an office environment.
Yeah.
Interestingly, also, two of our clients that we've been speaking to have been able to actually use some of their pandemic relief funding to basically make these changes in their infrastructure, enabling them not to only continue in business, but to grow out their systems and to meet new technology needs. So where a lot of companies, enterprises, businesses, schools are talking about, where funding may in fact be cut. There are many organizations out there that are able to get subsidies or have grants in place currently to support this change in their infrastructure and allow for this acceleration in their cloud-based communication.
Yeah, we're actually seeing a lot of success using just the simple contact center express and having scheduling people just go home, and contact center express for these schedulers has worked really, really well. It's inexpensive. They can light it up incredibly quickly and get those people that are just literally spending their days scheduling appointments, canceling appointments, moving appointments into a nice, clean, simple solution. And we're having really nice success with that from more of a clinic level, not big hospital level.
Right. Good. Yeah, good to hear. Thank you. Thank you for that. And yeah, that's kind of where we're seeing across the board kind of general trends of, the intermediate product offering is that alignment for a contact center with healthcare organizations and, scaling really to any size. So, good to hear. Thanks guys for that. So another question from the audience, we've been talking a lot about this consultative approach and educational approach. One of the questions from the audience is, how do you begin that conversation? So with that transition to the cloud, that educational approach, any tips or tricks or things that you've focused on or seen work well to break the ice with that initial educational conversation?
I'd say it's not really just it is the conversation, right? You have to train your squad to be educational about the way that they enter a sales environment. But for us, it was taking the time as an executive leadership and the bigger IT networking brains and putting that to paper in the blogosphere, right? Like taking the time to actually make legitimate answers to legitimate questions that are available in an online forum. And then that gives your sales team the tools to be able to reach out and start conversations based on the education that you're providing. The caveat and the trick is that you can't outsource this. For anybody on this call that's worked with an outsourced content creator, it doesn't work. They don't understand our industry and they never will. So you got to get those big brains in your organizations to cryptically write out their bullet points and then have somebody that can make that into human language, something digestible. But that was definitely the paver stones that set us towards that road of educating our clients.
I also think that along the way, if you're having conversations with your clients, they're going to tip you off about what their needs are. They're going to say things in their normal conversation that are going to give you the pain points. And it's amazing how crisis drives innovation. So it's that worker that said, well, I don't want to be giving out my own cell phone number. And right away, oh, well, you don't really have to do that, because with 5 endpoints on a license, you could just pick up your phone or pick it up on another product that you have, and it's basically the same contact ID as if you were sitting at your desk. And being able to be a little bit anecdotal in the way that problems are solved is one of the greatest vehicles for initiating new sales.
We've actually changed our 30.
Go ahead, Kelly. I was going to say, I think to build on that. You love the delay. What we did is after each one of our webinars or with just some of our email, we would send out surveys, quick 2-3 question surveys of tell us business challenges that you are facing that we could help you better understand. And that helps identify, you send that amongst your customer base, you get a trend, and that creates the topics where to start the education. And then you start with those topic points and then start with a high level topic, webinar conversation, and then you could get down to a specific conversation with that customer. So for us, after every webinar or seminar or event we do, we say, what other business issues, not necessarily technology, but business issues are you worried about or challenged about? And we get some of this information from partners like Intermedia and some of our other partners of trends that we're seeing. And so we try to identify what the business issues that our customers are facing and start with the education of how to address those business issues. And then the technology becomes a second tier of that conversation. So, okay, Kelly, I'll be quiet. Your turn.
We just really went back to something ridiculously basic. We went back to our 30-second elevator pitch, which cracks me up. And we put 2 words in there: help. We're here to help, and we're here for you. We'll be here for you. We always have been here for you. We can help, and it doesn't even matter what the expansion was, helping in their data network, moving the infrastructure to the cloud, whatever it was, we'll help you do it. So the word help has entered our vocabulary a heck of a lot more than it ever has. And we really do it, though. We don't just say it, we do it.
Yeah. All great points. Thank you. All right, so we are just at time here. We're about to wrap up. There's just a couple other questions, actually one other question here that I can hit on quickly. The question was, how do I sign up for the funds and assistance from Intermedia, like we were talking about earlier? So that is reaching out to your sales rep So all Intermedia partners have a dedicated sales rep, and they can get that conversation going. From there, then either myself or another member of the partner marketing team will jump in to help with those specifics and make that happen. And last item here, it's not really a question, it is a comment, but an interesting anecdote based on the conversation we were having earlier about, the remote versus office. One of our partners, Keith, out there said that they've had a client that is decided to go full remote for the long term. They're actually closing their office. So, back to the conversation of, hey, remote's here, cloud's here, and flexibility is key across the board. But again, this longer term remote is definitely going to be here. So with that, I want to thank everyone for today. All of our attendees for joining and listening to the conversation, and mainly our presenters. Ryan cracked a joke earlier about us being in competition with each other, but this is what's going on out there. It's bigger than all that. So getting together to share these ideas, have a dialogue, have a discussion, and a conversation. I think it helps everyone. It helps kind of what Ryan started off saying. It's the potential to help society as a whole. So thank you again, everyone, for being here.